Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission for Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. I'd like to open the meeting at 7:30. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Carpenter,
Here.
Mr. Fitzer, Mr. Kucera,
Here.
Mr. Nushai,
Here.
Ms. Redmond,
Here.
Mr. Scott,
Here.
Mr. Solomon,
Here.
Mr. Tinley.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any problems with tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will approve it as it stands. And we'll go on to agenda item number 5, which is approval of the regular meeting minutes from December 10th, 2024. That will be our last meeting.
I will motion to approve our minutes from December 10th, 2024.
Support.
Motion support. Anybody have any changes, problems, corrections? Seeing none, I'll take roll call, please.
Mr. Kucera,
Yes.
Mr. Nushai,
Yes.
Ms. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Solomon,
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin,
Yes.
and Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is public discussion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to opine? Seeing none, I will then close public discussion, and we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is short-term rental ordinance discussion. This is what we sent on to mayor and council, and they bounced it back to us, right?
Right, thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. Your packet included kind of like just a slightly updated version of the memo that we've been looking at that has the language that we sent to council. And rather than putting things in there, I'm just going to put some things on the screen and kind of talk through a couple things with you all and see if we can kind of get to what we want to recommend to council tonight. And then once we've done that, get it in front of them and let them have a look at it. Let me put this up on the screen here.
And just to clarify why you're doing that, it says in our packet that we were going to look to schedule a joint meeting. Is that still the case?
Well, that's something that we're thinking about. We'll be discussing that tonight.
Okay.
Where is my share screen thing? Oh, there it is. They moved the button. So. One of the things that we heard back from council was that the annual inspection that the Planning Commission included in its recommendations was not something that they were interested in. But when we talked about it last month, the Planning Commission did still think that an upfront inspection, interior inspection of the unit made sense. So wanted to keep that in the recommendations in the memo that we're moving on to council when we ultimately settle on what we're doing. So I wanted to share this language with you and see if this kind of captured, your thoughts as far as that's concerned. So the Planning Commission recommends that the general ordinance be amended to require an interior inspection of the short-term rental unit when an applicant applies for a license, and the license should only be issued if the unit passes inspection. So that would be the compromise position. If they're not wanting to do annual like the Planning Commission originally recommended, let's get an upfront inspection and then make the issuance of the application contingent on that, on the results of that inspection. Does that
So-
sound
oh.
reasonable?
Yeah, the only question I have is, do we need to be like specific in what things we're looking for in terms of the inspection, such as like working, smoke detectors or fire
safety.
extinguisher?
I think you
Fire
could
safety.
probably tie it to what they would need to pass a building inspection, like to get a C of O for a building for a building. Because that would require all those life safety things and that the place is up to code and the structure is sound.
Right.
So I think you could probably tie it to the standards that we would use for a building inspection when you're going for a C of O.
So is there a way we can add a memo to that to explain for purely safety reasons, we would ask that it be similar to that? I mean, I know that wouldn't be part of the ordinance, but kind of like, I know that we talked about our last meeting, how we felt like maybe giving them a little memo on the side to get our rationale would be
Right.
helpful.
Right.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I've got on one of these other slides is when we talked about the districts, I tried to capture what I thought the Planning Commission's rationale was in terms of the districts that we put it in. So we'll look at that in a minute. But yeah, I think we could do that. We could, I could expand this language just to note that that's what we're looking for.
Joe, how long does the license last? Is it 1 year, 3
It's
years?
an annual renewal.
So we can put in applies or renew for licenses to sneak it in for an annual?
That's what, kind of what our original suggestion was. But council did not want to get into an annual inspection.
And why do we make the licenses annual then? Make it 3 years and then you can have an inspection during renewal.
I think our rationale initially on that was because that's what they did for the regular rental. And it was an exterior inspection, correct? But like, we were lumping it.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Was that
Yeah,
right?
so the regular rental is a 2-year license,
Oh.
and there's their exterior only.
Only,
You're right
so
on
it's
that.
2 year, okay.
Yes.
So,
So do we pick 1 year from number heaven or we just pick it on?
The initial short-term rental ordinance, I think, was approved in 2022. And I believe it was just done to have some more routine
Sure.
applications for it. 'Cause I think at the time there was some concerns over, when people turned them into Airbnbs and if they got sold off, so they could reapply for those licenses year after year.
Okay. I was just seeing if it had a lifespan, if we could sneak
Yeah,
in and once renewal happens, if it's long enough, right?
I mean, if you wanted a lifespan that if, instead of having the annual, upon initial certificate and then every 5 years you have an interior inspection, something like that. So it's not every year, but it does have that routine inspection by the building official. I think could maybe kind of meet halfway on that line.
That's typically because you just, once they apply, then they got the golden ticket, right, for the rest of the time. So how would you feel? Because I do that a lot with suppliers. Once you approve them, you set a value 3 or 5 years for reinspection or review.
I would think 5 years, 5 years is probably important. I mean, in that time, because of the turnover, there can be a lot of things that can wear away and stop working. I would be supportive of that, but, and again, council can modify our, they can say no. So, I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm on board with that as well. I mean, I would like to see the license renewal every single year, so I don't want to tie it to the license renewal.
It is
Yeah.
at this
But-
point, yeah.
But,
This
an
inspection.
inspection every 3 years or
Upon your
something.
3-year anniversary, if you want to call it, you
Yeah.
have to have another interior inspection. Some language along that line.
Right.
Right, the rental fee is $80 right now for a 1-year
Correct,
license, and you have to renew that every year.
correct.
So all we're doing is saying we'll do the interior inspection one time and then wait 2 years, 3 years before we require that again?
Correct.
So
I
that
mean,
is-
based on what we're talking about right now, yes, it would be in whatever period is selected.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think problem with the council was the letter that we got from the real estate agents, what we talked about before. If I'm selling my house and I can't get out right away, I'm going to stay there for a while, so I'm going to rent from the previous owner. That, to me, is a completely different ballgame there. I don't think that's considered a short-term rental, not in my book.
I generally wouldn't think of it as one either because it's not being done for business purposes. It's a
Right.
pretty standard part of real estate transactions, really.
But technically, you can collect payment for that. Like, sometimes buyers will collect payment from sellers if there's like, you know,
Yeah,
30
but I don't
days.
think we're going to restrict them to the same problems that, they're not really a short-term rental. Not in my book, it's not.
Oh, I agree, but I think that was more to caution us on,
Right.
you know, potential legal interpretations might,
Yeah, we don't want to lump them together and confuse that issue.
Right,
I
yeah.
think mayor and council might be
Yeah.
concerned with that.
And then, real quick, if I can jump in. So in the current short-term rental ordinance, it states, all dwelling units except those which are duly registered as a principal residence exemption under section 211, 7 CC of the General Property Tax Act, which are used for short-term rentals for more than 14 days per calendar year, shall be registered and licensed with the city. And so, you know, reading his letter, the one that they received from the GMAR, it's kind of unclear as how long people may stay in that home. So maybe with this recommendation, it could just, with the recommendation on the inspection, or recommendation could be to have just a separate item in the ordinance that allows for like the transfer of a principal residence. It's permitted to, as long as, you know, it's not going to be a consistent short-term rental, if that makes any sense.
yeah, that, I guess, but at closing, the principal, they usually rescind. I don't know, I don't want to get into too much of the legal. I mean, there were examples with Berkeley that I thought, or Rochester, that I thought kind of helped a little bit with that, but like technically, you know, if someone sells their home, they rescind that principal residence exemption and it's filed in
Under the
the
new
buyer.
person. So
Yeah.
therefore, it never falls
So,
into that short-term, non-principal residence category.
It would be a non-principal residence because the person selling it would be rescinding it and then paying rent to the buyer who's now taking on that principal residence. Does that make sense? So I don't know if it captures that necessarily.
But it's a one-and-done thing,
Yeah.
okay? It's
it
not a
definitely is.
recurring, there's no recurrence
And look,
there.
GMR isn't the
Yeah.
planning commission, and I'm not even part of GMR, but, you know, I did think it was, yeah.
Yeah,
But-
no, you're right that the language that we saw from Berkeley and, was it Rochester or not, Rochester, both did have some ways to kind of handle that, so.
And it was like two sentences to where it doesn't affect the rest of the ordinance. It was simply for like, if it's a real estate transaction, basically buying,
Yeah.
selling,
That-
then
it's
it
fine.
doesn't.
You're
it's-
precluded from the
right.
short-term rental ordinance.
And I think that that's just a really easy way to just,
Be done with that.
yeah.
Yeah, somebody coming in for a short-term rental is not buying the property, they're not signing paperwork.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
Yeah, there's-
purchasing, so I think it should be.
they're not
clear
going
that-
and signing their name
And nor are they selling
800
it.
times.
Right.
Okay, cool.
But
Well-
for this topic that we just kind of passed by a little bit, are we going to pick 3 years to have an inspection? Does that sound good to everyone? We have a
That
number?
could be your kind of intermediate recommendation. You could say, we know that you weren't comfortable with the annual. We're going to suggest an upfront and then every 3 years hence.
Everyone good with that?
Yeah.
I think I can live with that, yeah.
Yeah,
And then
like-
council, of course, can do with that what they
Right.
Right,
will,
and
but.
if, as long as, you know, as long as I watched that video and I get kind of where their feeling was at on like, look, we don't want to just micromanage all these rentals. But it's just simply like a C of O safety kind of inspection,
Yeah.
a very much like, are there fire,
Right.
safety things in place to where, you know, we're protecting.
And there's only 10.
And there should only be 10 of them.
Right,
So,
yeah.
yeah. I just, on the subject of exemptions, are there any other circumstances that might warrant some kind of exemption here? I know we had one gentleman here who had owned the house next door to his house. Some sort of, your primary residence is in the city kind of language or something like that. existing at the time of the adoption of the ordinance language. I guess those are kind of the things that I was thinking about, is if we've got licenses that are out there now, do we want to carve out something that if that license remains in effect, it's
Well, those
kind
are
of
grandfathered in.
pulled in.
Yeah, and
It
then
is
as
it
soon-
is a non-conforming
As soon as
use,
there's
so
a change of
yeah.
hands, it's gone.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of, it would be formalizing that, basically.
Well, we can't.
I just worry-
We can't put a restriction on it. The owner of the short-term rental lives in Clausen. We can't do that, I don't believe. I mean, can't they live out of state and buy a house here and run their business that way?
Well, yeah, somebody could do that. I don't know. I guess I'd have to talk to Rennis about whether or not you could tie a condition to residency.
We could get corporations from other states even buying up property in Clausen and running
Well,
them out.
that certainly happens in other communities, so.
Distance,
But
yeah.
Joe, isn't it true that there's no action that we take here that's going to be applicable to the existing short-term rental licensees, right? So.
As long as they're,
As long as they remain in
then
business,
they-
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
well, in,
And sorry, for clarity's sake, though, what about the 3-year inspection? Because do they have an anniversary of their permit? Like, how would that
Yeah,
apply?
that's a
More just for the sake of,
mechanically interesting
if they're
question.
listening, they know what their responsibility might be.
So the way the ordinance reads, and I'm just gonna pull it up to make sure I've got it down to a T. The license technically expires on December 31st of that year. And so it would just be based on that. So technically, they're all on the same cycle anyway. So every third year, you'd be conducting all 10 short-term rental interior inspections. So it's not like you'd have to be tracking different ones because they're all based on the same certificate schedule.
So the 10 that we have in town now that are licensed have not been inspected,
The interior,
Exterior only.
exterior only.
exterior only?
Correct.
And then would we force them, when they renew their license, to do an internal inspection at least once? Or are we only
We'd have to
gonna do
get
that for new
confirmation
people?
on how that would work if they're already existing, how the new ordinance would come into play. I could see it working both ways, so I don't know right now.
Okay.
I mean, either way, if it's not now, it would be 3 years from when they first got their license, which most of them came in within the last year, if not then. So their first initial interior inspection would probably be in 2026.
yeah, I would think that part of that application would be, aside from the non-conforming portion of it, would be following our ordinance, right, and the regulations for it. So in 2 years.
And I'm also just
essentially.
thinking of a more practical standpoint, like not just short-term rentals. If you had a new ordinance come into play to go and inspect auto collision shops, can you just walk into any auto collision shop in Clausen and inspect them? I don't know. And so it kind of gets into
Yeah.
their private property rights. And so I don't want to give a for sure answer right now because I frankly don't know.
So in terms of the, did we already fix the whole clause with the gentleman? I do feel like, you
Yeah,
know,
I
he's
think
not our-
we know what to do. We know what
Okay.
to do. So, honestly, I would have done it in this memo, but I was like, I'm just not 100% confident in what I'm putting in this memo, so I decided to just make it a discussion tonight.
Okay, because I think, well, I know it's not the same thing, but when certain cities were giving preference to residents in terms of marijuana and those licenses, I think that a lot of cities faced litigation for those things, so I would
Sure.
say probably not, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. The last major discussion item I had here was, I just wanted to run this by you because I wanted, again, we talked about getting more of the rationale into the memo. So I wanted to run this rationale behind you. We chose these particular districts, and our thinking was that was commercial use, and there is case law to support that. And placing it where other accommodation uses, hotels and motels are permitted, is consistent with that. That was as I recall, our rationale. So that was what I was going to put in the memo that ultimately gets conveyed to council. If you want to add anything to that, let me know. But that was my impression of the rationale for that.
That's a very concise.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Okay, cool. I will do that then. And I didn't have any other questions for you. If you had any other thoughts for me, I welcome them.
So just timing, right? And also we did note that, does it require still having a joint meeting to discuss it a little bit more informally? Or no?
Well, I mean, it may not necessarily come to that. I think what we need to do is we need to have you guys look at an updated memo. And the next agenda is getting kind of long, so it might be the one after that. And then if you're satisfied with it, give council a chance to take a look at it before we formally send it to them with a recommendation, and just see if there's anything else that we need to address.
There was the fence thing that I know was brought up.
Yeah, we took that out of the.
Oh, we just took it out? Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
thought I saw it in
it
here,
just
so-
says it at the end of the memo that we're going to take that out because
Oh, okay.
we knew they didn't want that. So, so that was pretty clear cut, more so than most of the other things. So, yeah.
And you might run our opinions past our city attorney to see
Well,
if
definitely, yeah.
if he has any feedback,
Yeah.
if we're breaking the law somehow.
Yep.
So Joe, in our packet, the first part was city council's portion and the second part was our portion, right? Like, that wasn't something I was clear about. It's been going on for so long, maybe I'm just
Oh,
not
sure,
recalling.
yeah,
But like the
right.
darkened portion of it was all our ordinance, the stuff we're responsible for?
Yeah, I think so.
34 dash, we're like
Yeah,
34-ish,
that's-
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where we are, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at my own PDF, so I was like, oh, is that what was in the packet? Okay, yeah, okay, yep. Yes,
Because there were
that's
both in
it.
here, so I just want to make sure I looked at the right one.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I'll get that reworked version together and we'll take a look at it. And then if we're good with it, we'll let council also take a look at it and just see if there's any feedback.
And do we have to bounce it off of the public before we send it to council or no?
Well, we can have them kind of tell us if we're
If they like it or-
converging.
if they like it or not.
And then we can have a public hearing and see if there's any more comments on it.
Okay.
But yeah, we will definitely be having a public hearing.
Did we already have a public hearing on that, or no? We
Yeah,
had-
yeah, when we
I
made
thought
our
so.
first initial recommendation, that public hearing was in November, I believe.
Okay.
So we need to do that again?
Yes,
For
we
this
need to do that
version.
again, exactly.
It's so long. I mean,
It's the
People-
ordinance that never ends.
People have had lots of opportunities to weigh in. We'll just look on the bright side, right? Lots of opportunities for
We spent
input.
almost 2 years on chickens here, trying to get them in town, so this is not that long so far. Okay, you good with short-term then?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is the 2024 Annual Planning Commission Report.
I suppose I won't sit down. Yes, so the 2024 annual report, as you're all aware, we do an annual report every year, and that is actually a requirement of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. And basically, the purpose of it is for the Planning Commission to communicate its annual activities to City Council. City Council receives it and files it. So it's basically you make a motion to transmit it to council with any edits you might have, and then they receive it and file it. So it is a bit of a formality, but it's also a good opportunity to take stock and kind of see what we've done. And I can tell you right off the bat, we had a lot of meetings last year. It was a very, very full schedule. And this document kind of organizes it with a little introduction. Here's the statutory underpinning for this, who's on the planning commission, who's helping the planning commission. And then our department activities breaks out all the reviews that we do. So by type, site plans, special land use, rezoning, and planning and development are the categories that we had last year. We talk about kind of quick summaries of all the zoning amendments we worked on. We amended our bylaws last year, so we mentioned that as well. Talked about training opportunities, our work on the master plan. Of course, we work on the capital improvement plan every year. A little bit about the sustainability committee because they did some work at the beginning of the year. A little bit about the year ahead, and then a listing of all of our agenda items that were set for action by month or by meeting, really, every meeting that we held in 2024. So we had 21 meetings, 2 workshops, and 1 joint session with City Council, plus 1 special meeting. So a lot of meetings, like I said. You guys worked hard last year. And if you have any questions or comments,
Joe,
this is where I welcome them.
on page 2 where you have the chart, there's a few date issues there.
Okay.
It says, number 1, it says Planning Commission held 18 meetings in 2023.
Oh, I forgot to update that.
Oh, and then, I don't know about everybody else, but my term is out until 2026, not 2023. So I think there's some term ending dates
Oh,
that
yeah, I've
need
got
to
to
be updated.
confirm all those dates, yeah. Yeah, 2026.
Is the
Nick, I'll
plan,
confirm all those dates with you.
is the plan to get that in front of council at their next meeting, maybe for reappointments and to fill the void here? Is that doable?
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that during the staff report a
Okay.
little bit further, so I'll just hang tight until then.
Okay.
Nick, just had a question. Once we get this all to final copy, this will be posted digitally on the websites as well, just to communicate to the citizens?
Correct.
Okay.
So, once the planning commission approves it, they'll recommend that the city council receive and file it. Then at that point, we'll put it online on the website and share it.
All right, so yes, those dates do need to be updated on page 2. Thank you.
And I believe Commissioner Tinlin was appointed secretary at the beginning of the year. I was absent for that meeting, actually.
That's true.
Yes.
Oh, right, yeah, you were the secretary the year before that, weren't you? Yeah, okay.
How do you like the secretary position?
You haven't signed a document
Signed
yet.
anything?
But it's been a very tough burden for the 2024.
You get a rubber stamp with your name on it yet?
I was ready to stamp those documents.
Responsibility.
Busy.
It was just too exhausting for me.
He passed the torch over to me.
Joe, whenever are you needing another minute?
Go
You're
for
good?
it.
Okay, I have a question on 533. Did we postpone that, or was that denied?
It has been postponed. By default, it was postponed because you need 5 votes to advance that to council one way or another, to deny or to approve, and we had 4 votes each time that they were here. So we never moved it on, and they have elected not to come back at this point. So
Okay.
it's sort of kind of like it's just sort of dead at this point, I think. It never moved on to council due to the lack of a majority of the planning commission agreeing and being available to vote one way or another. And that's what's required for rezoning, is you have to have 5 votes in the
For
affirmative.
or against?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
okay.
And did that stop them proceeding from remodeling the interior? Just selected not to do it? Because it was insurance purposes,
Interior
right?
remodels are okay. They were looking to become a conforming use.
Okay.
They would have had so they're a non-conforming use now. They would have become a conforming use, but then they would have been non-conforming with a couple of the setbacks. And I think they actually are already non-conforming with some of the setbacks.
Okay.
It's one of those old buildings that it's been there for a long time, and it just doesn't quite fit any of our current.
Wasn't it problematic that if the building burns down, they'd have a hard time to replace it?
That was one of their major rationales, yeah.
That's why they wanted to change the,
Yeah.
I'm surprised he hasn't come back, but, it's his call, I guess.
Maybe he'll come with a PUD.
Yeah.
That site has been mentioned in the past by developers who decided not to move forward after talking to us, but it's always a possibility.
Yeah.
You don't need our approval on the annual.
You need us to recommend it. be
Yeah,
filed,
you
right?
basically, you would say you accept the annual report and forward it to council.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the 2024 Planning Commission Annual Report with the noted modifications, and send it to council for filing.
Second.
Any motion supported, any further comments? May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
And Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 9, do we have a planner's report?
Oh, that was it.
That was it. We're combining planners, okay. Number 10 is staff report and training opportunities.
We will rewind back to the conversation on the appointments. So just real quick for just everyone's reminder that the Planning Commission bylaws state that the officers of the Planning Commission shall be elected each year for a one-year term by the Planning Commission at their first regular meeting held in each calendar year, and shall hold office until their successors are elected and assume office. So as of December 31st, 2024, there are currently 4 expired terms, which all 4 of those individuals have submitted their reappointment application and are under consideration for reappointment. So until those 4 positions are reappointed by the mayor and city council, it's best to just maintain the current positions until that time, just barring any potential modifications to what city council decides to do. Additionally, I have handouts from the Michigan Association of Planning for some training opportunities coming up. Inside of it, there are 6 different upcoming opportunities with a mixture of in-person and virtual options. And so if you do have any interest in attending any of these, please let me know and we can get you registered for those events. I believe these ones are all held in March or later in the spring, so it's not like you need to make a decision now. But of course, let us know as soon as you want to, if you're interested, so we can register you in due time. Additionally, I'm going to add a new little tab in here, just the upcoming meeting tentative schedule, and that's just going to be items that we have on the docket prepared that we're planning on. There always may be changes if an applicant wants to add something else that needs review. It might be postponed to a meeting, or if there's some type of ordinance amendment Joe and I want to put on since the last meeting, we'll do that. But right now, for January 28th, we have the master plan open house scheduled before our regular meeting at 5 p.m. And we're going to begin marketing that later this week for people to come out and participate in that discussion. Also on that agenda is the next review of the House of Barbecue site plan, as well as the initial review of the Baker School site redevelopment. And then on the first meeting in February 11th, we'll have the review of the master plan pending the feedback that we get at the open house. And then we're also looking to have the Shalom development on either that meeting or the 25th, depending on how reviews shape up and when we get their final application. During feels so long ago, the first meeting in December, we had discussed some zoning ordinance amendments. Joe and I have continued working on those in our meeting at the office together next week to kind of patch through what that language would look like in those amendments. So once we have those done, we'll likely bring those to your attention and see what you think based on the discussions we've had previously. And then just some business updates. 502 South Main had their certificate of occupancy issued, and 516 North Main has completed all of their TCO tasks. We're just kind of closing out the final admin items. Due to the holidays, there were some staff out of the office, so we couldn't close out properly, so that was extended.
What's the 502?
The old CNC bump shop.
Oh, CNC.
And again, if you haven't stopped by there, I would absolutely recommend going in there and chatting with both Darren and Peter who owns Peter Mark's Salon there. The interior looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it looks great outside. I haven't been inside.
Yeah, it's really cool what they did on the inside. They definitely have a modern approach, but they kept some of the interior architecture of the brick, and so it just adds a whole new environment there.
Great.
Did you know, are they going to have a, like a cutting ceremony, kind of grand opening thing?
Yeah, again, with the holidays, it was just tough. They opened up in December, and they wanted to just kind of focus on opening up. I think we'll talk to them about doing something in the next couple of weeks with the
Okay.
chamber, yeah.
Couple questions. So you did address this when you summarized kind of what the next meeting's agenda might look like. But I was hopeful that since we're getting so close to the finalization, hopefully, of our master plan, if you could do what we started with last year, where you had kind of the next steps for the master plan, it's just so we can stay on task and get that complete as soon as possible. Hopefully there's only a couple items now, obviously with the open house and reviewing the final draft if there's any edits. But yeah, that would be helpful just to keep that on this packet.
Yes, and I do have a bit of a rough timeline that I shared with the city manager last week, so let me just pull that email up and I'll share with you. I'm not able to locate it right now, but essentially what we're looking at is the open house at the next meeting, and then after that, unless there's any big changes that come from that open house based on the public feedback, we'll present the final version of the master plan to you. That would be the first meeting in February, and then if it's satisfactory to what you're looking at, the recommendation would be to send it to city council for them to go out for the 63-day public notice period.
After which, public hearing, and then the event.
Yeah.
So that last working file you gave is what we're going to be with the public on?
Yes.
Okay.
Did we vote on that date of January 28th? Or, I mean, I'm not saying that we're supposed to, but I'm just wondering, was that something that we already discussed in?
Established at the workshop, yeah.
It was, okay, and of course, our planning commission members welcome to be there, or is it something that?
Would hope that all of you are there.
Right. Well, and I'll come, I just didn't know if there was gonna be an issue with like a quorum potential thing.
As long as you're
or-
not talking about action items. I mean, obviously,
Right.
master plan is, a goal, vision. You're encouraged to talk about it. But as long as there's not 5 of you sit in the corner talking about, a plan or something, I think we can manage to have all of you there. And again, it's an open house that starts at 5 o'clock. That'll go until 7:15 before the regular meeting. And so if you want to come closer to the meeting time and hang out at City Hall until the meeting, that's fine. Or if you want to come right at 5 and then head home for dinner or something, it's more than encouraged that way.
Will you have the stuff that you had at the, where, was that Clausen?
Yeah, I think,
Yes.
and what I think we're going to do as well is have the information from the downtown master plan, so we can just have both concepts there for everyone to take a look at to get some more feedback.
Okay, and that'll be here, or is it
It'll
gonna be
be
over?
in the community room.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, one more thing, just for you, possibly for Joe. I was kind of curious, so when we amended our bylaws for the annual review of the master plan, puts us in a weird position this year since we're currently working through it. I don't know if we have a plan for this year, but also, I didn't know, kind of secondarily, should we create some types of criteria? Is there something to work off of? I couldn't find the language updated anywhere in terms of how we would possibly do a review, and I thought it might be helpful to have a standard process going forward.
Yeah, we've got a, I'm not gonna call it a form, but it's a guide.
Okay.
To master plan review, and I think we would provide that, we can provide that as a kind of a template for how you would do that each year.
Okay, great, that'd be helpful. And then do we have something we need to accomplish in 2025? Because we're in this weird limbo between adopting the new one?
Once we get to adoption, we can set some goals.
Okay.
And then go from there.
Yeah, right. I mean, this year would kind of be pointless to review the old master
Right.
plan that we've been working on, but I think once maybe we adopt it is when we can take that review approach and maybe send a tentative schedule of, what we can do into the master plan and put it into the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I don't know if you were at the school board meeting yesterday. Were you there at the school board meeting, or if you had
Yep.
any feedback? I tried to listen to it. It was impossible to hear.
There were some audio issues
They
there.
got some nice microphones.
Awful. So I was just wondering if you had any type of feedback. I don't even know what was presented at all, or was it just kind of, did they go over a site plan, a new site plan kind of thing, or?
No, so it was essentially just a conversation of what Robertson Brothers previously presented, what transpired, and then how they're moving forward. And so they are moving forward with a by right, so not a plan unit development, site condominium, which again is not a condominium as you think of like a multifamily, but it's just the development procedure that they're using. So it's going to be 39 single-family homes that we haven't received their final application yet, but again, we expect you to review that in February.
So they were kind of just there to meet and greet kind of thing
Yeah, I
with
think
city
just
council?
after how everything played with the planning commission, city council, they just wanted to have the opportunity to speak at a meeting with
Oh,
both
okay.
bodies present.
And are they the same developers that are doing Baker?
No,
Or-
they are different developers.
Oh, okay, okay.
I was surprised I haven't seen any work at the old Burger King site, but the site further down where they tore down the three houses. I was having breakfast at Nick's the other day, and I saw a backhoe out there in this weather digging. I thought they had the sewer pipes already buried in the ground. I can't imagine that they're pouring concrete this time of year.
They are working, so they had their engineering approved late last year, and they're just doing the underground work that isn't really affected by the weather. And then 172 West 14 Mile, they're still trying to get their engineering plans approved. They're waiting for a few final approvals from the county before they can officially move forward. But I believe we want to have a pre-construction meeting with them in the next couple of weeks. And then as the weather gets warmer, they'll
They
get
probably
moving.
won't start till spring then.
Yeah, it's supposed to be -2 next Tuesday, so.
Yeah, I
we'll
wouldn't
see
be out
how
there
that
digging.
goes.
Yeah. And downtown Charlie's is closed. We've lost that one business in town. And that's sad to see after 4 years. And I'm hoping it's that we're not putting too many restaurants in town chasing the older ones out, but we'll have to see how that plays out. I wish them well in the carry on. They're still going to go with WTF, I mean, the same owner. It's just sad to see somebody like that close. I think that's all I really had. Question. Does anybody else have any questions for? Nick?
Well, I do have a question on that Burger King site. I did notice they took down the black around, which I'm glad I can see runners and bike riders now when I'm, easing my way up. Are they going to, because I thought we put an ordinance in place where they have to have that screened off, but is there a way we could have it moved back a little bit for the safety of pedestrians? Or, I mean, I literally don't speed up and try to pull out in the road, but I almost hit a runner that just came out of there out of nowhere before. Is there a setback that we have?
So they were a bit preemptive with replacing their fence there. The fence that was up previously was more of a stationary fence. The new fence allows them to move it into the right-of-way when they're doing the development, pouring the slab, because the building is right up to the property line. So they do need to have the flexibility to move the fence, and so they do have that.
Well, when it was blacked out before is when the site issues, I felt like, were Well, and maybe the building will be a slight issue. It's just scary to see a biker just come out of nowhere, or, you know, a runner. But there's nothing in our ordinance that says like stay this far away, have a corner clearance or anything.
The ordinance is to contain your property if
Okay.
it's demoed under construction.
Isn't there language in the fencing ordinance?
Yeah,
At
you
all
can't-
corners, it
yeah,
has
you
to be
can't
clipped
block
back?
It has to be open view triangle, yeah.
Yeah, so could it follow that as well? And still contain the site?
I mean, if that's the case, we have two ordinances in conflict then, because you're supposed to fence off an area under construction which that entire property is. And I think securing an active construction site, you know, that way there isn't people coming in and out of it that aren't supposed to be, is important. But with those two ordinances in conflict, maybe that's another conversation. that
This
needs
is
to be
more
had.
arranging the fence in a way that it's safer,
Clear plastic.
yeah, by.
Or at least, yeah, something that you can see through on the corner at least.
So you're
I
still
can't be the
maintaining-
only one that's almost hit someone that
No,
just
I've
comes in.
seen it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you're still maintaining the security on the site.
Right, I mean, and hopefully by the end of this year, there's gonna be a building there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the interim,
Yeah, or in the next one, I don't know. That's a city council thing though, right?
you know,
Maybe
I
should-
believe that is not in the zoning ordinance. I'd have to double check.
Yeah, okay.
Are our crosswalk lights working on 14 Mile? Or are they still under repair? I heard another person
one-
got hit here recently.
The one on East 14 Mile has been under review by the Oakland County Road Commission for a very long time. We have a grant held up right now to get that replaced to a Hawk signal.
That's the one that was hit, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other one on Washington is operational.
Okay.
So you want to change the one by Ace to be like, more like the one on Bywood, or Washington, sorry?
Correct.
Yeah. Maybe a sign for pedestrians to like make sure traffic's clear is
Yeah,
a good
we're
option, too.
working on some other safety mechanisms
Yeah.
on
Right, like
14 Mile and
Don't
Still
cross
use
the
your
phone, don't cross the street with your cell
Yeah,
phone.
like still use your,
And a big concept in the downtown master plan was traffic calming in the downtown area, which I think is something we'll probably begin exploring as soon as we can.
yeah, but at Ace, it is kind of hard. I've pulled up and you don't see a pedestrian even coming sometimes because there's so many cars parked along there that it might slow you down, but it can also obstruct your view of pedestrians a little bit. So I don't know if traffic calming's exactly the golden ticket on that one. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a 35-mile-per-hour road. People tend to travel over the speed limit, and so by traffic calming, if you have less than the current 4 lanes, people naturally will drive slower. As you're driving into downtown, you'll be more cautious of the pedestrians, is the intent of that.
So would there be anything in that would change that to 25? Because it's 25 when you're going north, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything that stops us from doing 25 in the downtown area going east and west?
It's Oakland County, right? So,
Yeah, you gotta work with Oakland County on that, but 25 would be, as someone who's frequently a pedestrian there, 25 would be very preferable to 35.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
no, even, and I'm not going 50 or anything, but it is hard to see a pedestrian, and the pedestrian, if they're just walking out, assuming that the light's working and that you're just supposed to stop and you don't see them right away, even 35 can be dangerous. So I think 25, I don't know, how do we do that?
Yeah, and again, I think those are all things we're exploring. I think we've had two accidents in the last couple months that have really brought that concept of potentially a road diet, or at least exploring some type of mechanisms to encourage pedestrian safety downtown. It's definitely something on the police radar. I spoke with Chief Baus about it today, and so we don't have the answer right now, but it's
No, are
something
you
we're
guys
actively
considering
working.
a speed limit change in your considerations, or just road diet?
I can't say that right now.
Okay.
I mean,
Maybe just for anybody listening, right? Where should they keep up with this information, right? Because it seems to be on everybody's mind right now. And I know, you hear that there's traffic board safety, there's, the downtown master plan has it in part of their recommendations for road diet, but like it's hard to figure out where I could go for just status updates instead of, maybe having to listen to every single meeting that happens and help you pick out information? Is there anywhere that you guys can collectively put updates or?
At the moment,
next
no.
steps?
I mean, the quick spot to do it would be on the city news on the front page is where we can have some updates. I can chat with Chief Buffs tomorrow to see if there's any type of information we can put out since it's unfortunately happened a few times recently.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Anything else for Nick? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no legal update tonight because we don't have an attorney here. Does anybody else have any comments before we adjourn? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
May I have roll call, please?
I'm sorry, who made that motion? I was trying to find my pen. And then Ms. Redmond, you seconded that motion?
Correct.
All right. Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Kucera?
Yes.
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'd love to see that change to 25.
Yeah,